Testing, testing. Today we're going to be talking about applying textures to images in Photoshop. This is a very simple yet delicate and ultimately abstract process in which we take an original photo, like you see on the screen, and then overlay a textured photo, such as concrete, to get some sort of like grunge texture, is what we like to call it in the web industry. And what I'm going to do here is overlay two textures over my original image. I'm going to take this one, which I shot in Vignette, Switzerland, and this one, which I also shot in Switzerland. And in Photoshop, I'm just going to do like a command click or something and basically just copy this original texture image to the image I'm working on. And I feel like using two texture images, so I'm going to use two today. And initially these images are obviously not sized to the size of the original image, so I'm just going to resize them on their respective layers. This is not something you have to do. You could easily use them as the size that they are or create any size of which you like. But in general, I usually fill out the overall area of the image using my textures. Now what you see here is just a very large, solid image. And now that we have applied a texture, the question is how do we blend the original texture into the image? Because the idea is that the texture is like some sort of addition, some sort of way to re-represent the original content of your image. So if you want to change some sort of lighting, you want to give some sort of flair, some sort of feeling to your original image, that's really what the point of a texture is. It's just a way to give some other sort of expression, do some sort of modification. So here's our image. And what I usually start out with is doing some sort of levels adjustment, because when you apply a texture, it's going to change the overall shadowing and light distribution on your image. So you really want to start with something that you want to have, which is why I do a desaturation and a levels adjustment initially. This gives us the base image, and now the question is how do we blend our concrete textures into the initial image. So here, now we just have a big picture of concrete because it's on a layer above the original image, and we can go through different blending modes, such as like a hard light, soft light, darken, multiply. There are people who program these things and know exactly what they do. I'm not one of those people. I just kind of like flip through, see what looks cool. And generally, I'm going to use something like an overlay or a soft light, depending on how the two blend together. So you just like look and see what looks good. I think this looks okay. Some of you may think that sucks. Well, okay, this does suck. I would agree. But eventually you find something that you like, and it doesn't really matter if anyone else likes it, just so long as you're happy with your work. So once we have the basic blending mode, I then start to go in and throw a few levels or curves adjustments down, because this gives me control over how the original image is in terms of its light and dark values, and then I'm changing these values for the overall images, which include the textures. And you can also throw in adjustment layers between the different textures. In this case, I think I'll just keep them as they are because I really wanted them to blend in together. And once you have this down, you're going to probably want to start manipulating the how the original image is standing out with respect to the textures. So here I've opened up a few masks, and basically all I'm doing is painting with a black brush with an opacity of like 20%, and I'm trying to reveal the face of this portrait, because otherwise the texture images are just like they're really strong, covering up facial features, covering up the eyes. That's something which I wanted. And because if you just throw down the textures and you don't do any sort of smart blending, or if there's no real, I don't know, method to your madness, then it just kind of, I don't know, for me it doesn't look very cool. So I'm going to take away most but not all of the force of the texture, because I don't want it to overshadow the image, but at the same time I do want that texture there to give some sort of texture to the image. And oftentimes, if you're working with a concrete texture, you'll see that there might be some huge crack which is going across the throat of your subject, which it's not really what I wanted, because it's kind of like my texture is decapitating the portrait. I don't know. That could be cool in some circumstances, but here it's not. So I'm just going to darken it out. I could also clone it out or do something to de-emphasize that part of the texture. And oftentimes I also add a solid color layer, because this is like the final step in kind of achieving the color balance which I want in the image. And again, I just kind of flip through the different, ooh, that's cool. No, it wasn't. Flip through the different blending modes, and I think I landed eventually on overlay or soft light again, because that's my cliche. And after doing a few final adjustments on the levels, then I'm going to save this and jump back to Lightroom. I do all my cataloging in Lightroom, even if I do the final image adjustments in Photoshop. Here's a previous version of this image, and now the one I just worked on should be popping up. Ah, here it is. My computer is really slow, so this takes a while. And actually, the image I did originally looks a lot better than the one I just did for you guys here. Sorry. It's crap. Anyways, in the Lightroom stage, I'm going to go back and work with the final exposure. I'm going to tweak the shadow values, tweak the desaturation values, probably play around a little bit with the clarity of the image and bump up the clarity slider if I feel like I need to. I don't always need to, but it's there, so I play with it. And this is also where I add vignetting if I feel like it, which I generally do, because I'm a cliche. And that's pretty much it. Once I have this final feeling for the image and I'm happy with it in Lightroom, then I'm just going to go and export it to Flickr, send it off for printing, do whatever I feel like doing with it. And that's how you apply a texture in Photoshop. I hope you found this useful. If not, well, it was free, so it doesn't really matter. And this is the end of our random Photoshop textures tutorial. More info is at AmericanPeyote.com. Thank you. Ciao.